Hi, this is Paul from Pear Tree Education, and today I'd like to talk about technology and the role it plays in 21st century education. Technology is by far the most popular topic concerning 21st century education, and many of the videos on YouTube are about just that. And although some of those videos cover other ideas, technology still seems to be the central focus. So the purpose of this video is twofold. One is to address some of the misconceptions out there about technology, and also it's about how to implement technology and use it in a practical, pragmatic way. So let's get the negatives out of the way first. Firstly, I'm going to make this point very clear that technology is not the solution to 21st century education. Technology is simply a tool to aid education and learning. Also, technology should not be taught as a separate school subject. As a tool, technology should be used in all classrooms. Any learning concerning technology should be based around the theme or the objectives of the class. Another issue I have with technology at the moment is the poor investment in such technology. I feel that too many school boards or schools are squandering money on technology that they don't actually know what it's for or how to use it. And because they spend so much money on the technology, they lack the funding to actually train their teachers properly in how to use it. So the end result of this is that things such as interactive whiteboards end up being glorified TV sets in the classroom, or simply used as regular whiteboards. When schools cut corners in terms of spending on technology, the result of this is that the things that they do buy are already outdated before they've bought them. For technology to be relevant, constant investment has to be made in that technology and its replacement and updating. And I think with the cutbacks to government spending, that this just amplifies this problem that 21st century education that revolves around technology in their mind is just something that's unfeasible to implement. I think that any investment in technology has to be made very consciously of the reasons why and how it's going to be implemented within the school. Otherwise, it's money down the drain. I'd like to give an example of this. Firstly, one of the key aspects of 21st century education is to promote student-centered learning. However, if all you invest in is interactive whiteboards, all this leads to is the exact opposite. It comes back to teacher-centered learning, because that interactive whiteboard becomes the teacher's gadget, and because of that, it just leads to more and more teacher talking time. So although I do believe that interactive whiteboards are extremely useful within classrooms and within education, I also think that an equal amount of investment needs to go into other technology for the students. Because even though you have these touchscreens that you can have multiple people using the boards at the same time, you can't have a class of 30 kids all interacting with that board directly. They need to have some alternative technology to interact together. And quite often that technology is too expensive for any school to buy. And the functionality of that technology can be very limited too. And my second example of this is also my second reason why I have an issue with technology as it is used at the moment. What many teachers think is 21st century education consists of using interactive games and quizzes. So it's like taking a paper-based test and then making it digital. And while this gives teachers and students immediate feedback on student performance, it just maintains the status quo on fact-based learning and completely ignores those high-level thinking skills that I've addressed in my other videos. Anyway, enough of the negatives. Let's move on now and think about practical and not gimmicky ways of using technology in education. As I mentioned before, technology is a tool. Move away from fact-based learning and allows students to do a lot of the research into facts using the internet. At the same time, these students are learning very valuable research skills, which then transpire into higher levels of education at university and beyond. Technology can be used to enhance critical thinking and critical literacy skills. Evaluating the legitimacy and accuracy of online content is a central part of 21st century education. It's also important for young people to understand the morals and ethics of using this online content. As you will have seen on the news, there are many incidents of bullying online. And I believe the key reason for this is the anonymity of the internet. So therefore I think that schools should teach about responsibility and accountability in the use of technology in the classroom and beyond. So another important point is the use of technology for collaboration amongst students and teachers. I believe that technology and social media allows people to share ideas. And while it's arguable that digital media can be kind of meaningless and destructible at the push of a button, I still feel that it gives students a voice when they wouldn't otherwise have been heard. At the same time, as I mentioned before about critical thinking, I feel that students also need to be taught how to deal with criticism, how to give criticism, and how to deal with a host of other issues concerning self-esteem with online content. I think one of the most exciting aspects of technology in education is its use for designing creativity. Students are able to create so many different types of content: written, audio, visual, 2D and 3D. They can create music, they can create videos, they can create photos, they can create magazines, they can conduct experiments. And then after creating this content, they can then use the technology to present their ideas, whether it be online or in person. So in other words, technology can be present at every stage of the education process, from the introduction and the research to the project making to the presentation. However, I think the creation aspect needs to be more than just using it to create, for example, a document. One of the things I want from technology is for students to be able to create very sophisticated work. And by this I mean things like car design, architecture, computer databases, software, games, 3D animation, and so on. But the problem we face at the moment is a lot of the software that's actually used to create these things is too expensive or too sophisticated for schools to use or for students to even understand. And then you've got the other extreme where the software is so primitive or it has absolutely no connection with the software used in the real world. It's kind of like Windows Movie Maker compared with things like Adobe Premiere. And I think software needs to be available where students can actually create their own software. I think some database programs can function almost like independent software on their own. For example, Microsoft Access or Lotus Notes have database making facilities that enable average people to create their own databases, whereas ordinarily it would be far too complex for them to do without some training. I think one last thing to consider is that technology is not just about interactive whiteboards or computers. Other examples include digital cameras, digital video cameras, digital microscopes, 3D printers, as well as things like microphones as well. Overall though, it's about finding ways to use technology meaningfully so the investment that's made by schools and by school boards is a worthwhile one that makes education more relevant to life and by making learning more dynamic. That's all for today's video. The next video I'm going to be producing will be about hands-on learning. That'll be coming out shortly. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate a rating, and if you haven't already done so, you can subscribe above. This is Paul from Pear Tree Education. Thanks for watching.